Hey folks, Lisa here from Mindful Tarot, and I'm going to do one of those September favorites type videos that just, kind of plunges into a whole bunch of cool stuff that I've been acquiring of late that I have to share with you because no one that I live with or near is really all that interested. They'll feign interest for a little while and then their eyes will glaze over. Okay, let me dive right in. I have a whole bunch of stuff, and some of the stuff is like very new, and some of it has been sitting and being loved up for a little while now. So this isn't really just September favorites, but it's like the favorites that I'm sharing with you in September. All right, so first off, my one, my only, my smoky quartz crystal ball. Um, Folks, there are universes in here. There is the world in here. My entire life is in this crystal ball, and I love it. Um, I love it. Now, I'm kind of completely obsessed with mirrors and reflection, and within Buddhism, mirrors are like, it's a huge metaphor. Mirrors for the working of mind and the process of enlightenment, and the ways in which humans found have found a capacity to look into surfaces and see themselves and their worlds reflected. And just that thing about light and enlightenment, right? That that it passes through and bounces off and gets split and refracted and reflected. And I mean, fire, it's so freaking cool. So I love this. Now I haven't started scrying yet. I want to know more about myself and my crystal ball before I really try to work with it and think about scrying. But I'm interested in scrying, and I'm interested in the history of scrying, which, in like almost every human culture, um, people look into reflective and refractive surfaces and try to see the truth and the future and themselves. So, more with this to come. I love it. So it's sitting on my altar near Kuan Yin, uh, near, among other things, this pyrite cube. And actually, pyrite is another surface that has been used for reflection and divination. So it comes out of the earth like this. And I think the red stuff is because there's iron in it. I don't know. I know nothing about like gems, and I mean, I know what I like. I know what it feels like. I know what I want to have, but I don't really know anything. Anyway, pyrite. So this is how it comes out of the earth, and then this is the tumbled form. I've had this for a few months. This I got relatively recently, and this guy sits on top of this guy. This guy is my trimmed Druidcraft, which I've just made peace with. I've made peace with the Druidcraft Tarot by trimming it. And somehow in trimming it, I turned it into wood. I don't know how that is, but it feels to me it has the the energy of wood. I mean, part of it is that it's edged in wood and that it's brown, but I can't explain it. So I don't know. I'm in love with it. I mean, the images I'm still not in love with, but the deck itself, I just feel really attached to it. So I've done a few really consequential, really important readings with it. Mostly, though, it's sitting on my altar and has been sitting on my altar since I trimmed it. And it's sitting in, I just want to do a shout out to Marjorie at Spectrum Studios. So she makes the nicest velvet pouches I've ever seen. They're fully lined in cotton, and they're beautifully crafted. They're more expensive than just your kind of wedding favor pouches. But for the decks that you really want to kind of elevate, it's like $11. It's a worthy investment. So I've also been recently, I've found very recently a much less expensive, also very nice pouch. I'm reluctant to go the route of just the cheapy organza, these pouches, or the kind of, again, like wedding favor pouches. They just don't feel, first of all, they're like made in China, and, I don't even know anything about how they're made. And the whole thing feels, I mean, it works, and in a pinch, it's the way to go. And if you have a bazillion decks, you got to find some way to protect them and protect your investment and keep them feeling loved and next to silky stuff. But I'm always on the lookout for other alternatives. And this woman Julia, I'll do the Etsy link to her below. She creates costumes and cool stuff reenactors. You know, like Society for Creative Anachronism folks or cosplay folks. Anyway, and she has a whole bunch of very inexpensive, for their quality, tremendously lovely bags. So she has velvet bags. Now they're not lined like Marjorie's, but they also are less than half the price of Marjorie's, and they come in more colors. So this is, this bag is protecting my Sam Weiser Toth Tarot, and it's just, it's in the cards are in a box, but I want to protect the box too, because, this is like 40 years old. Okay, so she makes these, the bags are like $5. The velvet bags are like $5. And then she also makes, and this is even sort of an even better deal, she makes, I think these are $3. These, you can't really see it, the light's not so good, but this is that kind of velveteen or faux suede. If you buy jewelry, you'll often get like these little black suede pouches, and it's really nice. I mean, really nice. So, okay, I'm not going to talk about Rider-Waite Smith decks, vintage decks. I've done a lot of talking about that, but I just want to, this is my latest acquisition. Oh my God, I just have to say this because it's amazing. It is a sealed 1980s deck. Sealed. Pristine condition. So I love it. Anyway, so, and the box is in pretty good shape too. It's in such good shape that I really want to protect the box. So I put it all in my little bag. Sometimes it feels like I love my decks. I mean, my decks are my world. Sometimes it feels like the decks are like, like the vehicle for the purchase of pouches, right? Because it's like, I love my pouches on my decks, and I love the whole thing. And then, of course, the crystal that goes on the pouch or in the pouch. What I usually do is if the decks are out on my altar or on my study table, they're out with the crystal on top. But if I put them, once I rotate them back inside or away, I have an altar table, an altar that has drawers in it, then I put the crystal inside. So the whole thing. Right? Okay. That's just how I do it. Individual results may vary, as they say. Okay, so those are some of my pouchy things. Oh, one more pouch. So this is a very special pouch. I have one of these, and I just discovered, well, I've been eyeing it on Etsy, and I'll also do the link to her below. So these are deerskin leather pouches. They come with little crystal points on them. And I wanted to get a very special pouch for a deck that is very special to me right now. I have been wanting a vintage version of this deck for a very long time. This is the deck that introduced me to the Rider-Waite Smith system. This is the Albano-Waite, the Frankie Albano, accurate color tone, 1968 deck. Now, the only reason I was able to afford this is because the person who advertised it on eBay did not advertise it as an Albano-Waite deck. They advertised it as the Sun deck, and so I saw it. I found it. I was searching and I found it. These will go for like $150 if the box is in good shape. This was a fraction of that price, but it also is the box was kind of a mess, and the cards are in pretty darn good shape. I mean, the edges are kind of funky. They've got like, they're brown, right? They're brown because they've been handled so much. I don't care. I love it. I love it. And this is funny. Someone wrote, Dark Man. So this is the King of Wands. So if you wonder, Dark Man, there you go. Now you know what the card means. Great. So the coloring of these, Elle, maybe if I remember, I'll put a link to Elle's video below. But Elle has, at Sacred Seed, has a very savvy video where she talks about the ways in which the Albano-Waite coloring is sort of more esoterically accurate. That was certainly Frankie Albano's goal. He made this deck coloring the Pamela Coleman Smith. You can see Pixie's, her autograph. Whoops. coloring Pixie's artwork in 1968 at a time when there still was no copyright on the artwork. So he was trying to give the colors that he thought were the accurate ones, the ones that reflected the true intention of the occult meanings. And, you know, what he created was really the tarot deck for the Aquarian age, right? I mean, these colors are the colors that made sense in, you know, in psychedelia, right? These are such vibrant colors, you know. So my husband, who's older than I am, who was coming of age in the late 60s, early 70s, you know, he still has only one card, but a strength card from the Albano-Waite 1969 tarot deck that was, I think, given to, I'm sure it was given to him by some girl at some love-in, who knows, you know. But anyway, so he's got the strength card. Let me see if I can find it. Not his is tucked away, but oh, I'm not gonna be able to find the strength card quickly. But these have that very distinctive sunburst backing to them. Now you can still get this deck easily, right? You can get it. It's been in continuous production. Oh, here's the strength card. It's been in continuous production by U.S. Games since they acquired it in, I think, the 70s. I'm not sure what date. The cards are just disgusting. They're plastic, and the coloring, I mean, it really is the worst of the kind of U.S. Games reproduction that we see in their very worst cards, you know, where it's like you feel like it's a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox, and then it's also on plastic to boot. So, you know, I've been playing with that for a long time, but have been wanting to get a vintage version. So this one was one I can afford. I'm still on the lookout for one in even better condition. One of the things Elle points out is she talks about how, you know, like talk about accurate color tones. So, you know, on the regular Rider-Waite, the B Boaz column is like gray-ish, and the Joachim column is grayish, and neither is full black and full white. So accurate color tone, as Frankie Albano will say. So I love me this deck, and I've already been working with it. It's now basically probably the main deck I'm working with, and so it sits in pride of place in its little deerskin pouch on my altar. I love it. The other thing, and this actually I found on eBay before I was able to find a deck. I've just been looking, you know, I sort of discovered like the eBay vintage decks, just a few months ago. So I've been going nutty. But so 1969, Hair, Broadway. These handbills were given out in the be-in scene in Hair, right? This is the Albano-Waite, and in fact, there's a little, credit to the Albano-Waite tarot deck by Tarot Productions, right? So this is a 1969 handbill. There's a company in Manchester, New Hampshire. This guy Lacey Long has a company called Preview, and he sells a whole bunch of stuff on eBay. Right? And there were a couple of these, and I don't know why. Actually, I think there were 4 of them being sold for like $4 each. And I waited. I don't know why I was like not buying it. I mean, I think at one point he dropped the price to $3.40, and I still didn't buy it. And then finally I was like, this is crazy. I think I was waiting in part to have a vintage version of the deck. Anyway, so I snagged his last 2 of these. And I think one I'm going to kind of tuck away and maybe at some point give to someone or sell, and the other one I'm going to frame because it's beautiful. Isn't it beautiful? Okay. There's so many other things to talk about. How am I doing? Okay. 14 minutes and 29 seconds. We've got hours to talk. No, I won't talk. Oh! I almost fell off my chair, guys. I'm so excited. Okay. So let's talk still a little bit vintage decks, okay? Just a few, I mean, just a tiny bit, because I know it can get kind of tiresome. I just want to say, and I'm going to do a full video about this, but so my very first deck of my life was in the 80s, and it was one of those white tuck box um, Thoth tarot decks, and it freaked me out. I loved it, and I was terrified of it, and I ultimately burned that deck, which I kind of regret, not surprisingly. Um, my second tarot deck was the Aquarian Tarot, and I don't know what ever became of that one either. But I now have, actually, I think this is, I think, a late 80s version of the Aquarian Tarot. Judging by the backing, which I love, that watery fish scale, koi kind of, I don't even know, like koi pond kind of backing. Very, feels sort of Japanesey, but also kind of, the sort of Art Deco styling that David Palladini brought to the tarot. And I'm just judging this as being, well, it has an advertisement for the Psychic Tarot on the back, and that book came out, I think, in 1986. So, somewhere between late 80s, early 90s was this deck. These are really common on eBay. I mean, there are tons of these and they go for a whole bunch of different prices, and you can get one for not too much money. I acquired this thinking that it was maybe even a first edition. I know more now than I did when I bought it. This is not a first edition. It's, an early 70s edition, judging by the cobalt blue backing, and the address of Dobbs Ferry, and the language on the instruction book in the back. But I don't know when exactly. I actually have. I'm kind of obsessed with the Aquarian Tarot. So there's a whole. I'll if I can remember, I'll put the link to the Eclectic Tarot discussion of it, the forum discussion of it below. There were tons of early editions. I have a 1974 one that is really interesting. At some point I'll do a whole video about them. But I have a feeling that this is fascinating to me, but maybe not to too many other people. Similarly, I mean, I'm really into these 70s decks, okay? Similarly, my Blue Box Morgan Greer Tarot, which is also a relatively recent acquisition, and, it's pretty nice. It's, whoops, I'm like, what is wrong? I'm like looking at this and thinking, what is wrong with that writing? It's upside down. It's pretty nice. It's, I'd still love to get an even better, more pristine box. I have no idea on the dating of these. So, the deck itself first came out, also Morgan & Morgan, the Dobbs Ferry company, same publishers, same producers, 79, but I doubt this is a first edition. But it's, it's nice. I love it. I'm happy with it. And let me just say a couple more words about crystals. So tourmalinated quartz is something I'm falling in love with these days. And it seems to me this is the crystal for my Aquarian Tarot. So I have this one, which goes on my 80s one, and this more bull quartz, tourmalinated quartz that goes on my, this one goes on my 80s one. This one goes on my 70s. Love me my quartz, my tourmalinated quartz. Oh, what else? Okay. I wanted just a little arts and crafts time, and another Etsy purchase that I think is really cool that some of you may groove on. I just want to shout out to my friend Jikie, who she sells these at our Zendo, but this is just a really beautiful, I think it's bone mala. And it's a Buddhist mala, so 108, what do you call it? Beads. There you go. I love it. Anyway, that sort of hangs out on my Buddha Tarot, which I keep in for no real reason in this Corona imported cigar box. But in that vein of Buddhist-y stuff, sort of slightly related to tarot, but mainly only related to tarot because I'm a Buddhist and a tarotist. So here we go. So Elle's fault. I got really interested. I'm not very handy, but Elle inspired me to try to do a little travel altar. This is a little magnet that there was an art show for these Buddhist scrolls at a local art museum, and they had promotional magnets. I cut off the part below that said, talked about the exhibition, and it's beautiful on this Altoids box. The way I painted this was you can get hammered spray paint. It looks like hammered metal, like that's the idea, okay? And tons of different companies make it. So I sprayed, I'm not handy, so this was like a 5-minute venture. I sprayed black hammered paint, and then I sprayed lightly over it gold hammered paint, so the whole effect sort of now really feels like it's hammered metal. And I messily did the inside too, just a little spray. And so here's my little travel altar. I've got a little aventurine stone, a beeswax candle. I recently made some of these for friends, and I put in little pouches. I also put some stick incense and a really beautiful, I found a little brass, very small kind of Ganesh, looked like a little, I'm doing the trunk, a little elephant head Ganesh brass incense holder in here. But when I take my altar, I don't have incense. I just count on the fragrance of the beeswax to be sort of my incense offering. And I have a little Buddha. I don't know why I keep doing baby talk. I'm sorry, folks. Anyway, this is my little Buddha. And my little Buddha sits, when I put out my altar, he sits on top of the aventurine. And this is the Etsy thing that I wanted to show you. So I have in here a box of matches. And there's this woman who will make custom matches, and it's not too spendy, and particularly because they're matchboxes, which you can then, once you've used up all the matches that they come with, you can recycle this part. And even if you, I guess if you use up all the striking strip, if it gets worn away, then it won't be that good. But I've had really good luck. I've reused them a couple times. Anyway, so this is Maitreya Buddha, just from an image in sort of, public domain that I got off the internets. And I got 3 different designs. This is Manjushri Bodhisattva, who's the Bodhisattva of wisdom. He carries a sword. Manjushri is, I think, basically the king of swords in a certain way, or maybe the queen of swords, actually. But the way in which the sword of wisdom works for Manjushri, and his relationship to enlightenment and to meditation and contemplation, seems very swordy. He carries a sword. So there you go. And then this is a photograph that a friend of mine took of Buddha at my Zendo, at my Zen center. So I have then, these images in my little travel altar, and the whole thing fits together, and isn't that special? Yeah. Okay. Now, I actually have more stuff to show than I'm going to show, because we're at 23 minutes and 40 seconds. And you know what? If you're like me, probably, your brain sort of shuts off after about 5 minutes of video. So there you go. But I'm going to keep talking. All right. So Annika at Nobody's Here turned me on to this little text. So this is a bilingual Spanish, Italian, and English edition from the Map Room Publications. So it's sort of an indie publication company in England that seem to be very small and specializing in tarot. And I think all they do, I don't know if this is true, but it seems like what they have is this book, this little pamphlet, and then also an addendum to Michael Dummett's, I'm going to be saying more about that, Michael Dummett's game, not Game of Tarot, his, I don't remember the name. All right. it's the big one after he wrote the Game of Tarot in 1980, and then in 2004, I think he came out with this huge magnum opus 2-volume thing that was a history of the tarot games, and there's a little like 80-page addendum to it that Map Room Publications puts out. Okay, I'll say more about Michael Dummett in a second, but this. So here's the thing, folks. Here's the thing. I mean, I'm a Renaissance. One of the things I do is I'm a Renaissance scholar, and I've studied Renaissance humanism, which is why I'm like totally, in love with Robert M. Place and the work he does with the sort of Neoplatonist and alchemical origins of tarot, and stuff that folks like Paul Hewson and Ronald Decker talk about in terms of esoterica. So tarot emerges as the first game that uses trumps in the 15th century, right? Or is that right? In the 1400s? 14th century in Italy. And it is a game that emerges because the 22 trumps are added to what we consider basically the modern playing card deck. The origin, I mean, this is what Michael Dummett just exhaustively demonstrates, and others have followed him, and others before him too, but no one quite like Dummett. So this origin of tarot in the Italian Renaissance, right? It's a game. It's a game like not unlike modern trump trick-taking games like bridge. It was the original trick-taking game. Italian Renaissance folks started to think about this game and think about the significance of it. Now, whether the originators of the very first tarot deck had alchemical ideas in their heads as they created those 22 trumps and applied them, brought them to bear on the playing card deck of 56 other cards, right? Whether or not they were thinking of alchemical meanings for their cards, I mean, I can't imagine that they wouldn't be, because those images were everywhere in their culture. But regardless of that, folks in the 16th century in Italy were trying to make sense of the meaning of this game, the moral significance of the game, trying to say that it had a moral significance, that it wasn't just a game. I had no idea that there were 16th century discourses on the tarot's significance. Here they are, folks. Here they are, and it's so interesting, especially the anonymous discourse, the way in which they're talking about hierarchy and the meaning of hierarchy. Also, the way that this anonymous author explains the meaning of the word tarot. He says, in the Greek language, taroko means a salty and precious sauce. It is a truly fitting and appropriate name, since tarot, is made of different things as a tasty condiment, or I guess the sauce is made of different things as a tasty condiment, full of incisive and healthy contemplations. This is why it is so precious. And he says, the only one among the others, tarot is the only game among all others that is worthy to be held in grace. So these guys in the 16th century are talking about tarot. This guy's comparing it to a precious and salty sauce, like tamari or something. But he's saying it's wholesome and healthy, and here's why. And he's going into the allegorical significance of the game of tarot. There's a lot to say about this, and I will in future videos talk about this. And I also want to be talking about Robert M. Place and the ways in which he works with allegory, because these guys are trying to give allegorical significance to the tarot deck. They're not using it as divination. It's like sitting down and talking about the game of chess, which people also did at the time, and saying, look, the game of chess is really about warfare, and you can learn from playing chess how kings and queens should relate to their people. They're saying similar things about the game of tarot, right? This game like bridge that is played. They're saying, look, it's not just a game, it also teaches moral lessons. That's what they're saying. In saying that, they're also offering all of these cool insights into the symbolic meaning of especially the trumps. Talking about the virtues and the trumps, so the moral virtues, the virtues of fortitude, right, of strength, of temperance, of, why am I blanking on the third? you guys are thinking of it before I am. My mind is going blank because I'm going to pause. I didn't pause. What is the help? What is the third virtue? Fortitude. Oh well. Anyway, prudence, right? One of the four virtues that isn't in the deck. But this guy says, Il Gobo, the hunchback, which is the hermit. He says, this is the figure of prudence. So, all four virtues are here. Anyway, there's lots to say about all this stuff. I will need to do another video. I'm still in the middle of researching it. And I'm researching this stuff by reading Michael Dummett and Ronald Decker. Here's the thing. Here's the thing I'm thinking about. The thing I'm thinking about is the relationship between the history of tarot as a card game and the history of tarot as esoterica, and the ways in which we who love tarot need to grapple with its combined joint relationship both to the history of games and to the history of divination and human exploration of the occult. So Dummett, this is, this not so thin book, but this is an expanded version of, one chapter of his Game of Tarot, which is out of print. And actually, I'm having a hard time getting it from the library even. I've got it on interlibrary loan. It's like 900 pages. And then the 2-volume later expansion of that, which really is hard to get. Dummett's the guy to read, at least for me, at least to think about this historical evolution of the tarot and trying to make sense of the ways in which the meaning of the cards both is something that's hidden and deep, and also something that is just humans inventing as they play. So here's my question, guys. Here's my question. Can we make sense of the relationship between play, creativity, that freedom of human expression as we just make sense of our worlds, we play in the fields of human endeavor, and then this sort of occult magic, deep, 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 deep. This is the stuff that is the truth. This is the stuff that is hidden. This is the stuff that is that to which we are initiated. There is, in our contemporary tarot world, a pretty sharp divide between those two perspectives. But I think it's on all of us to kind of grapple with both perspectives. So that's a little random and maybe a little bit too heavy and deep for a September favorites video, but it's where my mind is going these days, and yeah. And I'll talk more about that in some other video, in some other moment. Okay, so la-di-da, everything. Peace.